another season of anime. You know how this works. I watched the premieres of each new show and am here to dump on you my increasingly unhinged takes on all of them. I'll let you know whether I've picked up a show, put it on hold, or dropped it. And while I, of course, always recommend watching the shows I pick up, be sure to pay attention to my verbal recommendations for the other shows, as there may be something to your taste that didn't quite grab me. Remember that these are all first impressions based on the premieres, but if a show can't convince me to watch it in the space of an episode, that's usually a bad sign. All of that said, let's get into it. I can't believe I have to open this video by criticizing a Fate anime. I'm gonna get crucified! I'm gonna proceed under the assumption you have a general familiarity with the Fate franchise. Holy Grail War, Servants and Masters, that sort of thing. If not, and you feel lost as you listen to the rest of this section, well, that's kind of how it felt to watch the opening episode of Fate Strange Fake. The best way I can describe this episode is that it's so lost in its own lore that it fails to invite in anyone not already deeply familiar with the franchise. Characters that we don't know talk on and on about organizations and schemes we, the viewers, have no context for when coming into this as a new experience. And even if you do have metatextual knowledge that helps that all make sense, in terms of the basic foundational elements of engaging storytelling, namely pacing and characterization, this episode fails to deliver anything remotely engaging, anything that would hook me and get me excited for more. Take the main character Ayaka, for instance. What did we learn about her in this episode? That she doesn't want to do what mages tell her to anymore, and that's it. All we know about her is a single want. We don't know anything about her personality, her needs, her likes and dislikes, anything that would flesh her out into a more three-dimensional character. How am I supposed to care about the protagonist of the story when the first episode tells me nothing about her? Now apply that same lack of depth to the rest of the characters whose perspectives the episode keeps cutting between, monologuing about stuff we have little hope of understanding, and the effect is the viewer is left feeling confused and bored. Failure to drum up intrigue or interest creates poor pacing, and when you find yourself checking to see how much time's left in the episode, that's how you know it's failed to make a good impression. Let me be clear, a narrative dropping you straight into the deep end without explaining shit can be effective and is often preferable to the alternative of over-explaining things. Letting the viewer figure things out for themselves is good, actually. But if you're going to do that, you need to make sure the narrative provides enough context clues for the viewers to piece things together. Having characters exposit a bunch of proper nouns without further context is not how you do that. I will confess that I'm not a huge fan of the Fate franchise in general. Fate Zero is one of my favorite anime, and the other Ufotable Fate productions are generally solid. But aside from those, I have no vested interest in any given Fate anime being good or bad. I'm just calling it as I see it. I should also note that apparently there was an hour-long prequel special for this show that aired in 2023, which I have not seen, and maybe the context from that would have cleared things up, but this show has been, as far as I can tell, presented as a standalone work and needs to function as such. If that episode 0 was a necessary part of the story, it should have been presented as such, as episode 1. That I would call a failure of marketing. I suspect, though, that even if I had seen that episode, with how this present episode 1 failed to intrigue, this would still be a drop from me.
そして私にとっては最も許容しがたいことだが、この聖杯戦争をゲームやショーの類に貶めようとしている輩がいる。
Afraid I got some bad news, buddy.
We're in the money. We're in the money. We've got a lot of what it takes to get along.
Yusha Kei ni Shosu, Chobatsu Yusha 9004. I forget the fucking Japanese numbers. I'm sorry.
9004.
Keimu Kiroku, or Sentenced to be a Hero, dares to ask the question, what if the word hero was a slur? This show takes place in a world where the worst criminals are forced to be heroes, beings given incredible fighting prowess to push back against monsters at the cost of their humanity. If they die, they're forcibly resurrected, a process which erodes away their soul. One such hero is Xylo, who's out on a mission to cover the asses of the retreating Holy Knights, while also looking out for his pain-in-the-ass protege, Doda, a kid who just can't help himself from stealing any cool thing that catches his eye. His latest theft, A coffin turns out to contain a goddess named Terrorita. Goddesses are man-made weapons meant to fight against the encroaching monsters, and this one takes a shine to Xylo, determined to make a pact with him so as to fight alongside him. This annoys him, as he harbors some bad feelings about goddesses, but she sticks with him anyway, and the episode tracks the group as stakes and tensions escalate until he's left with no other choice. From a writing perspective, this was mostly solid. There's a few nitpicks I can make about the dialogue toward the beginning, forcing in some unnatural sounding exposition, but those would again be nitpicks. Aside from that, this episode does more than enough to build intrigue with its world. It gets you curious why, no matter how capable of fighters or how good of people these heroes prove themselves to be, the knights they meet are relentless in holding on to a seething hatred for them. Some of the dialogue between Xylo and Doda elegantly implies a troubled history between the two, helping to create a believable dynamic. Terrorita provides some welcome levity in the otherwise grim atmosphere, and the very last scene imbues our protagonist with clear, compelling motivation for the plot going forward. All of that's fine and dandy, but none of that is what's most important about this premiere. What is most important is, and I cannot stress this enough, holy shit, the animation! This is an hour-long episode, and the majority of it is stuffed with some of the hardest, stickest action sakuga I've seen in a while. It's brutal, gritty, and animated with such finesse and artistry that I can't help but throw up my hands and yell, "Peak!" Even if you watched this episode on mute and with no subtitles, the animation alone is enough to make it into a thrill ride. It's that good. So yes, good writing combined with stellar animation turns this into an easy recommendation from me. Tamon-kun ima dochi, or Tamon's B-side, is about a young woman, Utage, who's obsessed with an idol named Tamon to a frankly unhealthy degree. She works as a housekeeper, and one day just so happens to get assigned to clean Tamon's place, where she learns that, in stark contrast to his stage persona, real Tamon is actually a paranoid, self-deprecating mess of a guy. No self-confidence whatsoever. And that just won't do, no sir! That won't do at all. So, Utage gets fired up and takes it upon herself to care for him so he can keep being the idol she loves, and along the way, just might start to fall for his real self too. Under normal circumstances, I would criticize a show for having a protagonist in a romance story whose one and only personality trait is I love this guy, and that is still true, but here it kind of works by virtue of how over the top it is. Utage's not just obsessed with Tamon, he's so foundational to her life that when the real him threatens to collapse the idol version of him, so fantastic is her fury that the hard rock music kicks in and she goes full biker gang mode as she declares her righteous determination to keep Tamon on the right path. It's completely and utterly ridiculous, and for that, it manages to stay fun. That being said though, I can't say I feel a pressing need to find out what happens next. The dynamic established between Utage and Tamon, while fun for the span of an episode, doesn't leave a lot of room for growth or unexpected developments, leaving me feeling like I probably got as much as I'm going to get out of the show from just this premiere. Don't get me wrong, this episode didn't do anything particularly wrong, and if anything I've said sparked your interest, you should probably check this one out. Still, I don't need to see any more, so on hold this one goes. If it does go in new directions, though, do let me know. Majutsushi Kunon wa miteiru, or Kunon the Sorcerer can see, is about a young boy named Kunon. The only child of a noble house, Kunon is sad because everyone around him keeps telling him how sad it is that he's blind. Then he starts studying magic and gets excited at the prospect of making himself some working eyes with magic. He dives into his studies, proves himself a prodigy, and that's it. I found this first episode to be mostly dull. There was a gesture at humor at the very end, but aside from that, I struggled to find anything to latch onto. Credit where it's due, it's good that the protagonist has a concrete goal, but he's so otherwise devoid of personality that it didn't really matter. The episode did nothing to make me care about him. Also, and I'm not an expert on this, so take this with a grain of salt, when a protagonist's disability is central to their character, having their primary goal to be to air quotes fix that disability seems kinda ableist. I'm not saying for sure that it is, because I don't know where the story ultimately goes, but I will say, this setup sure seems iffy. I also found the kids made to be grating, constantly making jokes that are both tonally and contextually inappropriate. Finally, and this is absolutely low-hanging fruit here, but I have to mention it, there's one bit of animation that's so rough that it circles back around to being hilarious. Not trying to make fun of the production team, who no doubt were under tight deadlines and did the best they could with the resources they had and whatnot, but I mean, look at these horses! Look at these horses! So yeah, overall, this show did nothing for me, and I can't imagine it'll do anything for you either. Dropped. Hanazakari no Kimitatie, or simply Hana-Kimi, is an adaptation of an apparently classic manga that ran from 96 to 04 of the same name. It's about a young woman named Mizuki who's been living in America but moves back to Japan to attend the same school as a boy she idolizes for his high jump skills. It's an all-boys school, so she disguises herself accordingly and gets two shocks to the heart when her crush neither wants to be her friend nor is into high jumping anymore. She tries to prove her manliness, as it were, or at least, maintain the disguise, by doing sports, gets KO'd for her trouble, then the episode ends on a cliffhanger with the doctor cornering her with her secret. Based on the positive reputation of the source material, I'm going to venture to say that this adaptation doesn't do as much justice as it could have to said source material. Which feels bad to say, given that the episode ends with a title card dedicating the production to the late mangaka, who passed away in 2023. But there it is. Comparisons to the manga do this production no favors. Where the source material is illustrated in this gorgeous late 90s shoujo aesthetic, the anime tries to adapt the characters into more modern designs, and in that translation, the characters lose their original charm, with nothing to fill in that void. The story is fine, nothing to write home about, though I was amused by the beat where Mizuki breaks one of the school's track records and flees from all the sports captains trying to recruit her. That was neat. What this episode did do was get me curious about the manga. The episode itself didn't pull me in enough to make me want to continue with the show, but the manga's got my aesthetic. And knowing that was lost in translation, I can't help but wonder what else didn't make it from page to screen. I can't say for certain, but I've got the distinct sense that something important is missing. So, my recommendation for this show is don't watch it, but do follow me in checking out the manga instead. Rest in peace, Hisaya Nakajo. Yusha Pati o Oidasareta Hyobinbo, or Jack of all trades, party of none, is about, and hang with me here, a guy who gets kicked out of his RPG party and then dedicates himself to getting stronger, then sees a lone girl in trouble and goes into white knight mode to save her. So yeah, the setup is well-trodden ground, wholly unoriginal, and for that completely dull, but man, I gotta say, this first episode was a delight. Not because it was any good. Oh, no. This was horrendous. And that's exactly why I had a great time. I burst out laughing on multiple occasions at just how clumsy the writing was. Take the very second scene of the show, where protagonist man gets kicked out of the party. We basically know nothing about any of the people on screen, so any emotion this scene tries to conjure simply fails to manifest. But the script does recognize that it needs to communicate something about these characters, so how does it do that? Why, by having them tell each other fun facts about each other that they already know, of course! We're childhood friends, he says to his childhood friend. Shut up, man. Oh, but my favorite bit was this exposition from the extended scene in the back half of the episode where he and two sisters were sitting at a dinner table and expositing a whole bunch of boring lore nonsense and plot planning and whatever. Right before they sit down, protagonist has an extended internal monologue detailing exactly who the elder sister is, and apparently she, get this, invented the concept of basic strategy. You know, how an RPG party has roles like attacker, defender, and support? She invented that! It was her! Like, come on, man! Oh, fuck. So yeah, this show is so completely moronic, and not by design, that it circles back around to being incredible. In most circumstances, absolutely do not watch this trash, but if you've got the right friends and drinks, if that's your speed, this could be a fantastic show to riff. Ikoku Niki, or Journal with Witch, is about loss. Makio, a novelist, gets a call that her sister and that sister's husband have been killed in a car accident. This causes her no grief, as she and her sister hated each other for reasons not yet known. The same can't necessarily be said for their now orphaned daughter, Asa. Due to familial drama, which is only hinted at, Asa is the subject of lots of ridicule from everyone who shows up to the funeral, and that pisses Makio the fuck off, and so she takes her in. Makio's a bit of a mess and fully aware of it, fully honest about it, but is earnest in attempting to give Asa the time and space to grieve as she needs to. And while, for the bulk of the runtime, Asa seems more or less put together, it's Makio standing up for her that finally allows her to cry. This premiere was beautiful. Quiet, somber, melancholic in every aspect of its presentation, from the muted color palette to the restrained, light soundtrack of distant piano keys. It's thematically dense. Makio's clumsy, sometimes abrasive care shows that familial love isn't always about being sweet and nurturing, but about providing and understanding. The extended family lets petty drama interfere with what's right, and Makio's more than happy to burn bridges to see that her chosen family is cared for. Family isn't a family just because blood connects you. Makio and her sister shared blood and were at each other's throats, but Makio and Asa share less blood, are implied to share none at all, and yet form a strong familial bond simply by being there for each other, by choosing each other. And even through its melancholic mood, Journal with Witch is ultimately sweet for its exploration of what can be found on the other side of grief. New bonds formed, happy lives made. Externally gruff Makio reveals a warmer, embarrassed interior when she shows her true self to Asa. And Asa in turn gets a rare laugh out of Makio when a little goof shows that she still is just a kid, learning what life has to offer. A life ending does not mean life ends, as Asa learns when Makio decides that they need some real sushi. What can I say? The premiere of Journal with Witch was faultless. I'm honestly floored by its effortless beauty, and I cannot wait for more. Highly recommended. Gomon Baito-kun no Nichijo, or The Daily Life of a Part-Time Torturer, follows Sero, an easygoing guy who has a part-time job as a torturer, and his coworkers as they go about their very mundane workdays, and that's pretty much it. I only need 5 words to review this show: a comedy that's not funny. But if you need more words, here they are. This show is attempting to draw comedy out of the dichotomy between the horror inherent in the crimes against humanity the cast commit on the regular, and the mundanity with which they go about those crimes. Said attempts fall flat because the show's own premise undercuts itself, and it doesn't lean hard enough into the morbid half of that dichotomy. The show goes out of its way to reassure us that, don't worry, in this world torture is legal, and don't worry, they only torture the bad guys. And no? It'd be one thing if the show was set in something closer to our world where torture is recognized as bad. That would at least add an element of shock value where the otherwise normal people are treating the horrific as commonplace. But no, the show tells us their job is normal, and so that contrast doesn't hit as hard as it would otherwise. And on top of that, you can only really draw humor from extreme contrasts if you show both sides of the equation more or less equally. This show, though, doesn't show any of the torture, and therefore we're not invited to laugh at the absurdity of the contrast. I'm not saying I want to see torture, I'm saying that the show's inability to commit to its own bit handicaps it so hard that every attempted comedic beat falls flat on its face. Don't watch this show, there's nothing worthwhile here. Dropped. Kirei ni shite moraemasu ka, or Wash It All Away, is about a young woman named Kinme who lives in a quiet seaside town and makes a living running her own laundry service. And that's pretty much it. This show is inoffensive. Kinme is a pleasant, upbeat protagonist. She's made a good life for herself, and there's a hint of intrigue with just a single line of dialogue letting on that she's amnesiac, gesturing at further intrigue to come. The vibes are generally chill, with its vibrant colors and lack of a plot, just following Kinme as she goes about her workday and general life. This show wants you to relax and soak in its cool atmosphere, and all of that is perfectly fine. That said, it's just fine. Aside from that one hint of intrigue, there's nothing really pulling me in, making me want to continue. Nothing really wrong with this show, and if you're looking for chill, this one will do you just fine. For me though, I need more before I can commit, so on hold it goes. Isekai no Sata wa Sachiku Shidai, or Isekai Office Worker, the other world's books depend on the bean counter. Wait a minute, how's the English title longer than the Japanese? Is about Seiichiro, a corporate drone who sees a girl getting isekai'd, jumps in to save her, and gets isekai'd along with her. The girl was the target of the summoning ritual and supposedly has an important role to play in saving the kingdom, but he's just there by accident. Some officials offer to accommodate him and Sei, not knowing any other life, asks to be put to work. so he starts a job in the kingdom's accounting department, and because he knows no other life but working himself to death, shocks everyone there with how hard he goes at it, ends up potentially uncovering some financial fraud or some such related conspiracy, stirring up ire along the way. Meanwhile, sparks might also be flying between him and Knight Commander Eresh, who, in the episode's cliffhanger ending, stumbles upon him in shock as he's seemingly been poisoned. On the one hand, production-wise, this show is unimpressive. No exciting animation to draw you in, art direction is commonplace, lighting and scene direction are consistently passable and never anything more. Also, there's this one shot with the ugliest fucking carpet I've ever seen in my life. A visual spectacle this show is not. On the other hand, in matters of intrigue, I have to admit, my interest is piqued. For one, Sei is just about the saddest protagonist I've ever seen, a guy for whom the corporate drone mentality has been so thoroughly internalized that, upon getting isekai'd, instead of jumping for joy and going off on an adventure, he just throws himself into more work, then gets hooked on drugs to do more work. That is deeply, deeply sad, and if nothing else, I want to see this guy learn to relax, have fun for once in his life. He's got a good head on his shoulders, can recognize and help with others' problems. He just needs to learn to see his own. I'm curious about the court intrigue he's slowly uncovering with his financial skills, and yes, I very much want to see what comes of the apparent sparks flying between him and Eresh. For all of those reasons, I am going to keep watching this one. I can't imagine this show will be to everyone's tastes, but it did just barely enough for me to want to see what happens next. Mayonaka Heart Tune, or Tune In to the Midnight Heart, is about Arisu, who enrolls in a specific school in his search for a girl he only knows by voice. Uh-oh. He stumbles upon a whole harem of girls who just might be her, and the only way to find out which is to get to know them one by one. I'll just get right to the point. I found this to be completely fucking insufferable. The 23 minutes I spent watching this felt like hours. That's all down to Arisu himself. Credit where it's due, the guy has a personality, which is more than you can say for a lot of harem protagonists. Problem is that personality consists of always being the worst guy in the room. Loud, obnoxious, full of himself, creepy. There is not a single redeemable personality trait on display here. Please get him and this show off my screen forever. Sayoshi no Gike wo mederu tame nagaiki shimasu, or In Order to Love My Most Beloved Brother-in-Law, I'll Live a Long Life, is about a guy who gets reincarnated as the younger stepbrother of his husbando from his favorite gacha game, and that's all we get from this first episode, as they're just 4 minutes in length. There's not much to latch onto here. The limited animation is a shame, the short runtime is not effectively utilized to build up the characters and their relationships. As this is adapted from a light novel, I can only imagine that the source material, having more room to breathe, does its own story much more justice. Don't bother with this. Osana Najimi to wa Love Comedy ni Naranai, or You Can't Be in a Rom-Com with Your Childhood Friends, is about a guy who really wants to do a romance with one of his childhood friends but won't let himself for some reason, and his childhood friends who really want to bone him but won't say it for some reason. This show is trite, painfully unfunny, absolutely agonizing to sit through. Every single character was eminently detestable, refusing to just say what they feel out loud for the purpose of creating tired, asinine drama and soulless comedic beats. Each of them had me wanting to yell at the screen, "Use your fucking words." I would sooner dine on a fine meal of cow pies served with aged bleach than watch a single extra second of this pandering nonsense. Destroy any and all copies on sight. Yusha party ni kawaii ko ga ita node kokuhaku shite mita, or There Was a Cute Girl in the Hero's Party So I Tried Confessing to Her, is about Yoki. He got isekai'd as a general serving under the Demon Lord, and is quite dissatisfied with his life, having no taste for evil. Then the Hero's Party comes along to defeat his boss, and he falls in love with the healer of the group, Cecilia, at first sight. He lets the party pass so he can confess to her. She rejects him, he's immediately depressed, but then she offers to be his friend anyway. And so, Yoki starts building a new, evil-free life for himself, with the goal of one day wooing Cecilia. This show was surprisingly fun. Yoki's a likable protagonist for his earnestness. He's honest about his goals and entirely respectful in his pursuit of Cecilia. The show's overall lighthearted in tone, from its light color palette to the lack of urgency in the plotting, Yoki's easygoing attitude, and fun, even warm banter with Cecilia. Honestly, it's just a pleasant watch. I can't find anything to complain about. And moreover, I found myself invested. I want to see how their relationship progresses, and in general, what Yoki decides to do from here. Yeah, I think I'm gonna keep watching this one. It's harmless fun, and sometimes that's all you need.
29
Sai Dokushin Chuken Volkensha no Nichijo, or An Adventurer's Daily Grind at age 29, is, for the bulk of its runtime, a generally cute affair. An adventurer named Hajime is living a generally chill life after having spent a tough childhood alone on the streets. And one day, while exploring the dungeon to provide meat for the town he lives in, he stumbles upon a kid just trying to make it for herself. Relating to her plight, he takes her in, and though he struggles with trying to be a good parent to a kid acting like a little gremlin, they end up forming an endearing, wholesome father-daughter dynamic. But about halfway through the episode, Hajime wakes up to find the kid suddenly has an adult body, which the camera takes as a great excuse to zoom in on her cleavage. You know, the randomly adultified chest of an actual little kid. Then, at the end of the episode, a friend from town, doing some research on her own, realizes that the kid is probably a succubus. And the kid wakes up in that adult body again and looks down at her adoptive father with apparent lust in her eyes. Put it this way, I don't trust that this show won't pull an Usagi drop, and even if it doesn't, all that weirdness is more than enough to make me more than happy to nope the fuck out of here.
Fuck this shit, I'm out. Nope.
Darwin Jihen, or the Darwin Incident, is a lot. It opens with an eco-terrorist group storming an animal research facility and setting all the animals free. One such animal is a pregnant chimp, who gives birth to a human-chimp hybrid called a Human Z. Years later, the hybrid, Charlie, is dropped off for his first day of high school. He saves a fully human girl, Lucy, from falling out of a tree when she tries to save a cat, makes friends with her, weirds out a bully, then goes home. Then the eco-terrorist group escalates to bombing innocent civilians, including a kid. I fundamentally could not buy into this one. The writing was so self-serious that at times it felt like parody, such that while I did find myself laughing at the absurdity of what was happening, at no point did I feel connected to the narrative or characters, because those laughs were certainly not intentional. Take, for example, the end of the cold open. Here, a third-person narrator cuts in. Keep in mind, the entire rest of the episode does not have any narration. The narrator appears just here and just for this one exact line.
1859年、チャールズ・ダーウィンによって種の起源が出版された。
And then it just hangs there for 5 seconds before the OP cuts in, no follow-up or anything, and like, what do you mean? A book that was published on a date? So fucking what? That literally does not matter to the plot at all. What about that particular book is narratively or thematically important to establish here? I don't know, the show sure doesn't seem interested in telling us. You can't just give us the first line of a longer speech and expect us to fill in the rest. If you're going to provide narration, you have to, say something meaningful. And God, there's so much else I could bitch about. So many on-the-nose or otherwise ill-conceived writing decisions. Charlie's bio-dad is literally called Grossman, like, haha, he's gross, man, for producing an offspring with a chimp. Charlie's first friend is called Lucy, as in Lucy the first human. The bully character confronting Charlie, not with violence, but with a hypothetical so detailed I'm left wondering what the fuck we're doing here. Making sure the viewer doesn't accidentally sympathize with the terrorists, who might actually have a point, by making them do some nakedly evil shit a la Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but I think I've wasted enough mental energy on this show. Maybe there was some way to do this story justice, but this show's self-seriousness was not it. Dropped. Mao no Musume wa Yasashi Sugiru, or The Daughter of the Demon Lord is Too Kind, is about Du, the daughter of the Demon Lord. She's so nice and sweet that her father is too preoccupied worrying about her to conduct his evil plans. Basically, the cute version of this.
Is there anything so undaring as a daughter?
Yeah, you got it. So he puts a halt to his plans until he can get his daughter under control, and assigns one of his top generals, Jahi, to oversee her training. Du, though, completely unintentionally, foils her plans at every turn by being just the kindest little thing he ever did see. This is the most wholesome show of the season, no contest. Watching it is like being nuked by an orbital sweetness cannon. Du's persistence in being kind to everyone around her is endearing and heartwarming, and watching her give Jahi the accidental runaround through sheer force of sweet was so adorable that a smile was plastered on my face for the bulk of the runtime. Sure, there's not much narrative or thematic meat beyond what's on the tin, but that doesn't really matter. This show had one goal: be the most charming, smile-inducing thing imaginable, and it accomplished that perfectly. I couldn't ask for anything more. In fact, I would like to order 100 more, please. Arne no Jikenbo, or The Casebook of Arne, is a bit unusual in that its first episode is not about its titular protagonist and his his pals. They feature prominently, but it's actually about a kid named Louis, whose father got killed by the serial killer he was investigating, and so Louis dedicates himself to tracking down that killer. Lin, one of Arne's group, hears what happened to Louis and convinces him to cooperate with Arne's detective agency. Thanks to that, he ends up tracking down the killer, and to his shock, something supernatural happens. I'm a bit torn on this one. On the one hand, as a mystery story, this episode didn't work terribly well. The leap in logic that Lewis used for his final deduction to reveal the killer seemed out of left field, illogical, and prior to that, I don't think the episode laid out enough in the way of clues for the viewer to pick up on. On the other hand, there's some generally strong directing. There is a particularly brutal cut during the finale which made me audibly go, "Oh!" And aside from that, I think the cast of Arne's crew are all colorful enough. The ending seems to set them up as the recurring characters for an anthology of mysteries going forward, so if future episodes can flesh them out, then I can see this turning into something pretty solid. For now though, all that balances out to just a fine episode of television, and right now, I need more than fine to commit to more. I do recommend checking it out if you want a supernatural mystery with a cast of quirky characters, but as for me, I'm putting it on hold. Siboyugi de meshi wo ku, or Siboyugi playing death games to put food on the table, is so much better than that title implies or is implicit by the plot summary I'm about to impart. A bunch of young women wake up in a manor wearing a variety of maid uniforms. All but one of them are there by choice to play a game, escape the trap-filled manor, or die trying. Most are inexperienced except one, Yuki, for whom this is her 28th game. She takes charge, leads the group through the game, imparting knowledge and wisdom gained from her experience, saying that she'll try to keep them all alive but will prioritize herself. And, well, she makes it, as do a couple others, but certainly not everyone. This premiere was fascinating in that in terms of its presentation and pacing, it was ambitious in its attempts to be, quite successfully I would say, far more than just another weekly TV anime. This was aimed at being, and I apologize for how pretentious this sounds, art. This episode was not in a rush to get anywhere. It was very deliberate in its pacing, taking its time to explore its surroundings and its characters, often with long pauses or stretches of silence aimed at getting you to contemplate how surreal the whole endeavor was. David Lynch would be proud.
Fix their hearts or die.
Some might argue that this is an at best 30-minute script stretched out to 45, but if you can let yourself be lulled into its mood, the quiet atmosphere, soft colors, then you'll find those 45 minutes pass far faster than you would believe. And the show's propensity for quiet contemplation only helps those few moments of savage intensity hit all the harder. It's also set up a fascinating character study in Yuki. Here we've got a young woman who's never anything other than straightforward and honest to the group, yet she still manages to shock with her brutal practicality. How do you square her genuine attempts at being a good leader who looks out for her comrades with the calculated ease with which she can use those same comrades' lives? And her stated goal at the end, throwing her character into further moral grayness? Mwah! Beautiful. All in all, this was a fantastic premiere, and I'm thrilled by the notion that I have no idea what's going to happen from here. Absolutely check this one out. Odayaka Kizoku no Kyuka no Susume, or A Gentle Noble's Vacation recommendation, is about a noble named Lizel, who finds himself suddenly in an unfamiliar kingdom. To get his bearings, he wanders around town, then happens upon an absolute stud named Jill. He thinks to himself, "That's mine," then hires him to accompany him as he registers as an adventurer and explores this new land he's found himself in, thinking of it all as a vacation. So that synopsis probably makes this premiere sound a lot more invigorating than it actually is. And while I have to admit, the tension between Lizel and Jill was at times intriguing, for the rest of the runtime, this episode really felt like it was dragging its feet, stretching out each plot beat for as long as it could. I did not need to see the step-by-step process of Lizel registering at the guild, neither did I need back-to-back exposition dumps between Lizel and Jill, where the two just talked to each other with nothing in the way of meaningful scene direction. This show is trying to be chill, but there's a fine line between chill and dull, and unfortunately, this first episode crossed that line. The sparks between Lizel and Jill are nice enough that I can't outright call this a bad show, but nor were they enough to make me need to see more. So, I'm going to put this one on hold, but if I hear that this show does turn those sparks into a flame, who knows? Might be worth returning to. Eris no Seihai, or The Holy Grail of Eris, is about Connie. As a young girl, she witnesses the execution of some woman she as of yet does not know. She's the last thing that woman sees, and she smiles at her, says some words drowned out by the noise. Flash forward 10 years and Connie is attending a ball. She's been forced into an engagement and tries to tell herself that even though she doesn't love him, it's for the best. Then she catches her fiancé, Neil, snogging some wicked girl named Pamela, who's always been envious of Connie. Pamela schemes to frame Connie for a petty crime in front of all the gathered nobles and demands that her engagement be annulled so that she can have the guy instead. Connie protests her innocence, explains what really happened to no avail. Pamela's too charismatic, took control of the narrative first. Feeling hopeless, Connie prays for help and gets an answer. The ghost of the woman who was executed, Scarlet, possesses her, and with her charisma flips the tables and brings the room around to Connie's side. Now Pamela and Neil are the social outcasts, but Scarlet still makes sure to get the engagement annulled because fuck that guy. Then, Scarlet explains who she is. She once fell victim to just such a scheme as nearly claimed Connie, and now, as her price for helping Connie, she wants revenge. Let me tell you, as a big fan of angry women beating the shit out of and/or humiliating bastard men, this one did it for me. At first, I wasn't sure about this one. A wicked romantic rival framing the protagonist for something she didn't do in order to steal her fiancé is, at this point, a well-worn trope. But as soon as Scarlet arrived on the scene and stole the show, I was hooked. She's a charismatic character, easily able to take command of a room, and fun for how full of herself she is in private. This episode's also set up Connie as a likable enough protagonist who's got plenty of room to grow. She's kind and happy to help, but has trouble standing up for herself. And now that Scarlet's invaded her life, she may just have the partner she needs to help her grow into a confident, assertive person. This is also a very well-directed affair. Pacing is tight, and the show makes effective use of sharp lighting and bombastic sound cues to accentuate the drama of it all. There's nothing in the way of action, no sword fighting with monsters or anything, yet this episode manages to excite and enthrall simply through the primary actors going right at each other's throats verbally. Thanks to that, there's never a dull moment. And I have to say, I need to know what happens next. How's Connie going to cope with this ghost woman haunting her? How's Scarlet going to enact her revenge? I have no idea, but I certainly aim to find out. Definitely check this one out. Tome Otoko to Ningen Onna, Sono Uchi, Fufu ni Naru Futari, or The Invisible Man and His Soon-to-Be Wife, is about a blind woman named Yako who works at a detective agency with an invisible man named Tonome. The two start dating, and that's pretty much it. There's not much to say here. This show, like one of its main characters, was insubstantial. I can't point to anything this show did particularly wrong, nor can I highlight anything it did particularly well. It just was. I want to say I see what it was going for, what with the whole blind woman dating an invisible man thing, brushing up against some thematic material about seeing past one's exterior to what's inside, but the main duo are so exceedingly normal in terms of their personalities that I honestly lose sight of any messaging this show might be hinting at. I also can't figure out how to jam a Claude Rains joke into this section, and that makes me mad. And I recognize that's just my fault, but I'm gonna dock the show for that anyway, because I'm mean. Basically, try as I might, I can't find a reason to return to this show, so I'm dropping it. It is inoffensive, though, so if you look at this and think it's cute, you can certainly check it out. I ain't gonna stop you. Kizoku Tensei, Megumareta Umare Kara Saikyo no Chikara wo Eru, or Noble Reincarnation, Born Blessed So I'll Obtain Ultimate Power, is about a prince named Noah, who's born fully intelligent, apparently with memories of his past life, which we are not privy to, and his world happens to run on RPG mechanics, and lucky him, he's born with some skills that make him overpowered, so now he's just gonna try to be the strongest prince in the kingdom. His elder brothers prank him with a cursed sword, then his personal maid has to go sell her body because her hometown got flooded, and he's like, no, don't do that, this maid is mine. So he goes and buys out the town and tames the cursed sword to behead the corrupt official profiting off the disaster. Then the emperor's like, you done did good, kid. I apologize if my synopsis sounded dismissive, but I found it really hard to give a shit about this premiere. I'm already not a fan of RPG mechanics in non-interactive narratives, and they don't serve any meaningful thematic purpose here, just a pure mechanical one of making things happen. Like, the first thing I thought when I saw that one of Noah's skills was get more skills the more subordinates you have was, wow, that's sure going to be an excellent excuse for him to go and build his harem, huh? And I thought to myself, Do I want to watch this kid assemble his harem because this RPG mechanic told him to? Answer: no. I struggle to latch on to Noah as a protagonist. He's competent at doing the things he sets out to do and acts, and is, noble toward the people, both those who work for him and the commoners. But I'm not seeing that he has anything in the way of a definitive personal goal or notable flaws or an endearing personality. He's just playing the cards he was dealt. Credit where it's due, beheading the corrupt official in front of everyone was a nice power move. Aside from that, can't really say I care. Overall, this show didn't do anything for me, and I can't find a reason to recommend it, so that's a drop from me. Alright, I'm not saying that full Japanese title. Roll Over and Die is about Flum Apricot, a weak young woman who would have been content to stay in her hometown all of her life, but was recruited into the hero's party by some divine intervention. One of her party members absolutely despises her for being weak and for stealing all the affection of Cyril, the group's swordswoman, and so conspires to lie to the rest of the group about sending her home when in fact he sells her to a slaver. The slaver throws her in a cell with a few other slaves he can't sell, and drops ghouls on them so they'll be devoured for his amusement. For extra fun, he also drops a cursed sword in there to give them false hope, but it just weakens and melts whoever tries to wield it. Flum, though, would rather die fighting than give up, so she grabs the sword. Luckily, the skill that made her so weak actually helps her wield it. It's called Reversal, and turns all negative effects positive. Now, the sword heals her and strengthens her, so she cuts down the ghouls, does not hesitate to gut the slaver, then takes the one other survivor, a girl named Milkit, with her as she escapes. Determined to make a good life for herself and her newfound partner, Flum sets out to become a real adventurer. So I have to admit I'm a bit biased with this one. I've already read the first 4 volumes of the original light novel, and though I have a few issues with it, I've mostly enjoyed it. So I went into this premiere hoping it would do justice to the source material, and so far, as an adaptation, I think this is okay. It doesn't have the highest production values on the planet, goodness no, so don't go into this looking for great sakuga, but it's well directed, making effective use of the production's seemingly limited resources to deliver shot compositions and harsh lighting choices that effectively convey the grim mood of this opening chapter. More importantly, it hit all the narrative beats it needed to, successfully setting up our protagonist and her goals going forward, and hinting at the greater conflicts to come. The biggest thing this episode needed to get right was Flum's characterization, and in that department, I'd say it nailed it. Here we've got a young woman beaten to the absolute lowest point of her life, who thinks she's been betrayed by everyone who matters and for whom giving up would be easiest. But she doesn't. Instead, in the face of certain doom, she picks herself up and charges forward. And, out in the wider world, what's the first thing she tries to do? Pointedly, she doesn't start by seeking revenge. Instead, she just tries to build a good life for herself and Milkit, and puts on a genuine smile at the thought that they just might make it. All of that helps make her endearing. She's kind and hopeful, even to a naive degree. She's got a lot of growing to do, but thanks to all of that, you want to see her make it. Plus, she didn't hesitate to murder her slaver, and I'm like, yes, that's how you do it. So while I can't say I recommend this show to everyone due to its grim subject matter and middle-of-the-road production values, I myself am going to keep watching it, and if you can stomach some gore and a dark atmosphere, you might want to give it a shot too, because while the world may be dark, as Flum and Milkit show, there's always some light to keep hope kindled in the people who care for each other. Champignon no Majo, or Champignon Witch, is about a quiet witch named Luna. She makes her living selling medicine to the town apothecary, and is a town pariah because everywhere she walks, poisonous mushrooms sprout. She yearns for romance, and her drawing of a boy comes to life and accidentally steals his soul, which she has to return, and she swears to never draw again. This premiere was a shame because of its use of a narrator who would not shut the fuck up. Luna's extremely reserved, only having a single line of dialogue at the end, and seemingly to make up for that, the narrator explains every little thing she does, tells us why she is the way that she is and how she's feeling at any given moment. It's excessive and profoundly irritating. Oh, I'm sorry, you thought this was a visual medium where story and meaning are conveyed via the deliberate arrangement and presentation of moving images? Fuck you! A narrator is going to explain everything in minute, excruciating detail. It was agonizing. I swear this episode would be 1,000 times better if you cut out all the narration and most of the dialogue while you were at it, and just let the visuals and soundtrack do the talking. But as long as this show insists on using a narrator who explains every single thing, I will continue to not care. Dropped. Dark Moon, Tsuki no Saidan, or Dark Moon, the Blood Altar, is about Suha, a young woman who starts at a new school which only runs at night. She hates vampires with all her heart, and this school has a reputation for weeding out vampires, so she's thrilled to be in attendance. A boy named Heli happens upon her and accidentally discovers her secret, that she has super strength. She fears being mistaken for a vampire and thus ostracized, and wants more than anything just to make friends for once in her life. Luckily, Heli believes her when she says she's not a vampire. Him and his whole squad of cute boys feel oddly drawn to her, and as a measure of trust, reveal their own supernatural powers to her. Suha's thrilled to have a group of friends she can be open with, and the boys know she's not a vampire because, surprise, that's what they themselves are. I'm gonna say it, I liked this one.
I liked it.
This premiere set up a good deal of intrigue and sowed the seeds for some juicy drama. I like Suha as the protagonist. She tries to put on a confident, serious demeanor in public, but when in private or with those she's close with, she melts into a more bubbly, friendly persona. This episode seemed to be setting up a romance between her and Heli, and I like how that just doesn't define her whole personality. She's got her own goals outside of romance, a whole history that informs who she is today. Her being an outcast and hiding perfectly positions her to relate to the boys, who hide themselves for fear of being outcasts due to their vampirism. And there's an irony in how the people who relate to and understand Suha the most are the very same people whom she despises the most. Probably brushing up against some thematic material about discrimination and whatnot there, learning to see people for who they are, not their labels. How did Suha get to the place she is mentally, and how will she react when she learns the truth about her new friends? And why are the boys so drawn to her? I don't know, but I like these characters enough, and I am intrigued enough to want to find out. So, I'm going to keep watching this one. Hell Mode, and that's all I'm saying of that title, is about this guy. He's the kind of guy who puts 2,000 hours into a game, then leaves a negative Steam review that just says this shit sucks, bro, and fully means it. He sees an ad for a hardcore game, selects all the hardest difficulty options, then gets troned into it, waking up as a newborn baby. Then he spends literal years grinding just a couple of levels while figuring out how his RPG skills work. And that's it. This premiere was mind-numbingly boring. The lead is given nothing in the way of empathetic characterization. I came out of the episode not giving a single shit about him. He's given exactly one spark of life, well, a negative spark, to be clear, a spark that makes him off-putting, so sort of the opposite of what you want in your protagonist. At one point, he makes an extremely off-color remark about how much he just loved the process of getting milk from his teenage mother, which is not good. Don't like that. Or by extension him, as that's his singular most informative character beat in the whole episode, and like, no thanks. And aside from that, there was nothing to latch on to. Him being repeatedly beaten at play sword fighting could have been something if his playmate had anything in the way of characterization beyond love sword fighting, but she doesn't, so that's that. It's just a whole lot of nothing. I can't find anything to care about, so this is a drop from me. Long-ass original Japanese title, or Easygoing Territory Defense by the Optimistic Lord, Production Magic turns a nameless village into the strongest fortified city. Doesn't even get to the premise promised by the title before it loses me. It's another Isekai reincarnation show where the protagonist wakes up as a little guy. How many is that now? I lost count. Anyway, he spends years learning and training and whatever, and that's all dull and generic, nothing to write home about. But then, one day he's out at the market and he buys a slave. He just straight up buys a slave, and the show tries to portray it like a good thing. Like, fucking excuse me? You don't get brownie points just because you're a nice slave master. You still own a slave. Perpetuated a fundamentally evil system when you had the power to stop it. Like, fuck off. Hey, Flum, you want to take on some bounty hunting jobs? I've got some more slavers for you to gut. Nothing about this show matters or can make up for that. Into the dump of shame with it. Bye-bye. Tensei Shitara Dragon no Tamagotata, or Reincarnated as a Dragon Hatchling, is exactly what it says on the tin. A guy wakes up as a dragon egg, some menus pop up showing his RPG stats, and some system voice continues to explain throughout the episode a whole bunch of RPG mechanics at him. You got the poison resistance skill, and so on. He struggles to survive, and chooses a weaker evolution in chasing stronger evolutions down the line, an evolution which looks, I swear to God, like some Digimon. He then tries to make friends with humans who attack him, gets saved by a human healer, then runs to save the healer when she's in trouble. The big thing dragging this episode down was the system voice constantly explaining every mechanical interaction the protagonist was having with the world. No chance to figure out things for himself, or discover the world on his own. No, this omniscient voice is just explaining everything at whatever pace the plot deems necessary. Personality-wise, this guy doesn't have much going on. He's just a guy trying to survive, and that's it. Really, I struggle to identify anything to latch onto. As far as these learning to survive in a new world type shows go, this one is, as far as I can tell, inoffensive. So if that's your jam, you might enjoy this. As for me though, I can't find any reason to continue with this, so I'm dropping it. Dead Account is about, what if the social media accounts of dead people were haunted? Ooh. It opens with Soji, a guy who posts videos of himself beating people up as rage bait to rake in the views and cash. He needs the cash for his sickly sister, who needs an expensive operation in the States. One night, while texting his sister, a foul-mouthed guy breaks in, locks in on Soji's phone, and tries to smash it with a hammer! Why? Because his sister's been dead for a month. That's a ghost he's chatting with. The ghost tries to eat Soji, but he awakens some spiritual power and exorcises it. Then some of Hammer Guy's comrades show up and are like, we're taking this guy to our school. This premiere was fine. It was fine, perfectly fine. I appreciated that it told a complete, self-contained story which only hinted at the larger narrative to come at the very end. Soji goes through a complete character arc. He starts as a young man so desperate to save his sister, so deathly afraid of being alone, that he's willing to hurt strangers, refuses to believe she actually died, and tries to rationalize the horrible ghost monster attacking him and Hammer Guy as his sister. It's only by accepting his sister's death, by allowing himself to grieve, that he's able to exorcise the ghost and save himself and Hammer Guy. That's all perfectly serviceable. That said, because I got a complete story here, I can't say I'm in desperate need to see more. Soji's personal stakes in the narrative have already been resolved, and after that, what's left? Going to exorcist school to learn how to use his new spirit fighting powers? Okay, that sounds fine, but nothing we haven't seen before. I'm sure, going forward, that this show will be a perfectly serviceable shonen action romp, and if that's your jam, hey, this'll do you just fine. But because the protagonist's emotional stakes have already been resolved, I feel no need to continue. Maybe it'll come up with something even better to fill in that gap, and if it does, do let me know, but for now, I'm putting it on hold. Jingai Kyoshitsu no Ningen Gyari Kyoshi, or A Misanthrope Teaches a Class for Demi-Humans, is about a misanthropic man who takes a job at an all-girls school where he teaches demi-humans to be humans. And that's it. Part of the problem here is structural. The premiere opens in media res, which is fine, with the guy already teaching his class. Then, we flash back and spend half the episode laboriously going over the step-by-step process of him being unemployed, applying for the job, going to the school, and having exposition dumped on him about the nature of the school, its students, and the classes. Absolutely none of that needed to happen. This is a classic show-don't-tell situation. All of that information could have been more effectively conveyed by simply staying in media res and having the viewer pick up that information as they watch the show. Instead, the episode felt the need to verbally explain everything, and in so doing, it killed the pacing and put me to sleep. Also, can't say I jive with the wish fulfillment bullshit of what if you were an adult man surrounded by a bunch of high school girls pining for your attention. Just nope. Miss me with that shit. Finally, at one point, one of the students asks the teacher if he's put off by how inhuman they are, and it's like, no? You're not inhuman? Each of them already looks 99% human. If the show really wanted to lean into that question, really wanted to delve into the theme of finding humanity in the inhuman, then it would have shown that with character designs that leaned further into their monstrous aspects. But no, this is a show trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator by shoving a bunch of cute girls in its audience's faces. Cowardly character designs, that's what they are. Commit to the bit. Give them actual monstrous designs that would better reflect the theme. Then you'll have my attention. Overall, there's nothing worthwhile here. Dropped. Akioku Reijo wa Ringoku no Otaishi ni Dekiai Sareru, or The Villainess is Adored by the Prince of the Neighbor Kingdom, is about a woman who gets reincarnated as the villainess of her favorite otome game just as she's about to be denounced by her fiancé in favor of the game's protagonist. She lets all of that happen, then the prince of another kingdom drops in and proposes to her. This episode was frustrating because the main character, Tiara Rose, was so fucking passive that all I wanted to do was shake her and yell, "Do something!" This is a woman who knows all the bad stuff that's about to happen to her, but instead of taking active steps to prevent any of it, she adopts a shikatakanai attitude and lets it all happen. How am I supposed to give a single shit about anything that happens to this character if she can't be asked to do anything for herself? If she's wholly reliant on some man deus ex machina-ing his way into the scene to save her? There's a difference between getting lost in the romantic fantasy of a cool prince sweeping you off your feet and centering a protagonist so completely incapable of acting for herself that she'd probably let herself be led to the gallows without lifting a finger in her own defense. The former is fun, the latter is boring as shit. If the main character is not an active agent in their own story, it becomes monumentally more difficult to make the viewer care. And in this case, the show didn't provide any other avenues by which I could get invested in her. Also, a couple of nitpicks. Tiara Rose has to be the worst fantasy princess name I've ever heard in my life, and if you're making a villainess story where the villainess is not a girl kisser, you're doing it wrong. Sorry, I don't make the rules, I just enforce them. So, yeah, nothing worthwhile here. Don't bother. Sei Hanatai na Kimi to Boku, or You and I Are Polar Opposites, is about Suzuki, a girl who's crushing hard on a boy in her class, Tani, who's her opposite in every way. Where she's loud, energetic, and extroverted, he's quiet, reserved, and introverted. She turns into a mess at the mere mention of his name, and eventually tensions boil over until she confesses to him at the top of her lungs, and he returns her affection. By every measure, this is a good show. Suzuki's a fun protagonist, extra in everything she does, energetic to the point of being manic, her wild mood swings being the source of some decent comedy, art style's cute, and there's plenty in the way of fun animation to keep those eyeballs engaged. I would even say the episode really came to life at the end when Suzuki, previously keeping it all in, confessed her feelings at first to her friends, who were quick to support her, not a development I expected, nor often see. I like that the two definitively got together at the end of the episode, and the rest of the series is primed to track their relationship as it grows with them as a couple. All of that is good. That being said, though, for most of its runtime, I just didn't vibe with it, and I'm mad with myself because I can't quite put my finger on why. Maybe it's because, despite how well produced this show is and how likable a protagonist Suzuki is, the narrative is overall shallow. She's in love and that's it. But then, I don't know what else you could add without diluting the show's deliberate focus on Suzuki's shifting emotional state, so that might not be it. Whatever's missing, it's definitely something, and I needed just that little bit more for this show to fully hook me. For most people, I expect this will be one of the highlights of the season, and if you want a fun rom-com, absolutely check this one out. For me though, I'm content to place it on hold unless I hear that it, goes places. Uruwashi no Yoi no Tsuki, or In the Clear Moonlit Dusk, is about Yoi, a handsome girl who's popular with the girls at her school and has a reputation as a prince, but is annoyed by all that. Then, she meets Kohaku, a guy who literally sweeps her off her feet and seems to be the first guy ever to view her as a girl, and though she doesn't believe it's possible for someone like her, starts to feel that her heart may be opening to him. This did not do it for me, and this is absolutely just a me problem, but let me tell you, as a perpetually confused NB who's always putting way more thought into gender dynamics than is probably healthy, I found this narrative's attempts to play with gender expression and politics to be at best trite. A female character being somewhat masculine and being insecure for that fact and wanting their femininity to be recognized is a tired trope, especially in Japanese media, and just for fucking once, I would like to see such a character embrace that aspect of themselves and be proud of it. And a female character having the affection of other women but just wanting a straight romance is the most boring direction you could go with such a character. Look, my brain is broken, I'll fully admit to that, I'm crazy, and I recognize my insanity, you don't gotta tell me. For most normal people, they'll probably look at this and see admittedly gorgeous character designs and artful directing for a heart-throbbing romance. If that's you, then fantastic. Please enjoy. I mean it when I say I am happy for you. Envious, even. But I am fundamentally broken and cannot force myself to suffer through any more of this, so I won't. Dropped. Hikuidori, Ushu Boro Tobigumi, or Oedo Fireslayer, The Legend of Phoenix, is about firefighters in Edo period Japan. One guy used to be good at it, retired, then gets called back into service because the province is in financial straits. He's got some PTSD though, so it's gonna be a tough job. Let's get right to the point here. While the story may be fine or intriguing on paper thanks to the setting and the profession it focuses on, this production has been absolutely kneecapped by its rough 3D animation. There's the occasional spark of life, but at its frequent worst, the animation is extremely stiff. Lots of completely static character models with a handful of awkward lip flap frames. It's giving Berserk 2016, just not a pleasant viewing experience. If the setting intrigues you, probably you should check out the original novel if you can read Japanese, but give the show a hard miss. Yusha no Kuzu, or Scum of the Brave, is about magic. Specifically, it's about drug magic. Inject yourself, get powers for a bit. Criminal organizations love this shit, and the people who use the same magic to fight them are called braves. One such brave, Yashiro, can best be described as a self-centered bastard. A brave in training, Aki, falls on her head right next to him, watches him take out some goon, then petitions him to be her master and help her and her comrade from her school save the third member of their group, presently being held captive by a local crime boss. Eventually he agrees and they set off to do just that. This was fine. It's got some bloody, gory action which could go harder, but works for what it is. The episode successfully builds some intrigue, leaving us wondering how Yashiro got to be so cynical about the whole Braves business. Aki's alright, loud, determined, sometimes naive, and sometimes surprisingly sharp. Her being a righteous pain in her new master's ass could be a fine enough dynamic. Fine, it's all fine. But that's all it is. Fine. Characters we've seen before, dynamics we've seen before, a setting that feels all too familiar. Going forward, I'm sure this will be a perfectly fine action romp, and if that sounds up your alley, then by all means check it out. But I need more than fine, and I feel no pressing need to find out what happens next, so on hold it goes. Kaya-chan wa kowakunai, or Kaya-chan isn't scary, takes place at a kindergarten like any other. Kids keep getting shoved off of a swing and hurt. One girl, Kaya, tries to keep them off, apparently has a history of telling kids no. A new teacher, Chie, scolds her, distracting her long enough for another kid to give the swing a go. Surprise, it's a ghost. It's escalating too fast. That kid's in trouble. But wait, here comes Kaya with the rescue. She leaps into the air and with one mighty sucker punch banishes the ghost. Let's fucking go! That's the strongest psychic in the world right there. There to protect her fellow kids even though they're scared of her. But now, Chie's seen her in action. What will happen from there? That's all just the cold open. Just the first few minutes and already I'm hooked. And the rest of the episode doesn't let down. It's got plenty of spooky ghost action and that's all fun, but more importantly, it manages to drill down to Kaya's emotional core, and in so doing, the episode unveils the narrative's overall heart. The big question Chie has throughout the premiere is, why does Kaya never explain herself? She's always just telling kids no, saving them from the shadows, and as a result, detaching herself emotionally from everyone around her. Why put herself through that pain? Answer, because she's been through worse. She's tried being honest, only to be met with disbelief, scorn, ridicule. She's retreated into herself because she thinks no one's there for her. But now, someone is. Chie, who believes in her. And that's what she needs to finally open up again. This show's got cool, spooky action, yes, but that's all in service of a heartfelt narrative about a kid who can't connect with others and the teacher who's finally able to get through to her. Spooky and sweet. It's a combination as unexpected and perfect as chocolate and peanut butter. I absolutely adored this episode, and you can bet your ass I'll be returning for more. Prism Rondo, or Love Through a Prism, is about Lily, a young woman in the early 20th century looking to make a name in life for herself. She sets out from Japan and enrolls in an art academy in London. Her mothers set a deadline: be the best in 6 months, or we are pulling you back home to marry someone. Problem is, the #1 student in the school whom she has to best is Kit. Perpetually dirty, social disaster, but underneath it all kind, and, worst of all, hot. She swears to herself she won't lose to the likes of him, and only time will tell if she achieves her goal and how she'll deal with Kit. No sense in beating around the bush, I loved basically everything about this premiere. Lily is a wonderful protagonist, energetic and self-motivated. She's taking in London with wide-eyed wonder, childlike excitement, which helps endear us to her. And she's got a strong personal goal, to rise to the top of the academy, and a driven protagonist is one easy to get invested in. Her enthusiasm is accentuated by the animation. She's extremely expressive throughout, making her easy to love, and the presentation beyond that is stellar. Soft colors, bright lighting, and calm music all help to create a relaxing atmosphere, which is maybe historically inaccurate given that we're talking about, London, but it's nice. Because the show's called Love Through a Prism, I imagine we've got romance in the future, most likely between Lily and Kit, and I'm on board with that because that's not the goal Lily came in with. If and when such a development occurs, it will be something she found along the way. Up front, Lily is her own character with her own goals and personality outside of romance, and that's what makes her compelling. The show even goes out of its way to start developing her relationships with the supporting cast before even naming Kit. From the overly serious professor to Lily's first friend at school, Dorothy. Wait a minute, she's a friend of Dorothy! Anyway, between the strong characterization of its lead with a clear goal and stakes, and the gorgeous presentation, this premiere is easily one of the best of the season. It comes highly recommended, and hey, it's a Netflix show, so you can watch it all right now, which is either great or a shame, but there it is. Go watch it. And that, finally, is another season of anime. In total, this season I have picked up 11 shows, yeesh. And among those, my 3 favorites, my Pantheon of Peak, are, in no particular order, Journal with Witch, Siboyugi, and Prism Rondo. If you check out any 3 this season, give those a whirl. Before we sign out, a bit of housekeeping. Previously, at least one viewer has expressed interest in follow-ups to these seasonal anime videos. While I don't have time to do such videos for individual seasons, last year I tried to do a brief follow-up section in my year in review video, but that was a very last-minute idea, so it was just brief. This year, I'm planning it all in advance. I aim to have a more complete retrospective on each season in one big end-of-year video. So, if you want that follow-up, make sure to stay tuned for whenever that happens in late December or early January, whenever I get to it. Cool? Cool. Anyway, that's it from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.